Gaius Marius was born in 157 BC in Latium. His family wasn't really aristocratic, but he had some noble connections, so he was able to marry a noble woman, hold local office, and he could join the Roman military.
Lucius Cornelius Sulla Felix. That's a cool name. He was born in 139 BC in Rome. Sulla married into a powerful family, a rich family, and became a military leader between Rome and the other places that Rome controlled. Sulla and Marius became two of the most famous men in Rome during their lives through their military conquests, political careers, clash for power. They were a leading cause to the decline and destruction of the Roman Republic. Now let's find out what they really represented and understand the legacy that they left behind. Around the year 133 BC, Marius gets a ranked job in the government, which is pretty cool. And it's pretty much the beginning of his career. And see, it's important to remember, just keep this in mind, that Marius is about 20 years older than Sulla. Just keep that in the back of your head. And a few years later, in 123 BC, Marius becomes a quaestor, just a financial office. And this is the start to his climb up the cursus honorum.
In 119 BC, Marius became the tribune of the people. The tribune of the people was the office that was in charge of the rights of the plebeians. This raised him up one step on the cursus honorum, and in 115 BC, Marius becomes praetor, which, was basically a judge, and being a praetor is only one step away from consul. In 114 BC, Marius becomes the governor of a region called Further Spain, aka Hispania Ulterior. Being a governor was basically like one step higher than consul. When Spain became a province of the Roman Republic, it was subdivided into two sections, Hispania Ulterior and Hispania Citerior, which means near and further Spain when referring to Rome. In 112 BC, Marius marries Julia, who was a part of a very powerful patrician family, and this makes Marius the uncle of Julius Caesar. Interesting, little fun fact there. After getting married, Marius returns to the military and is placed in charge of fighting Jugurtha. Jugurtha was the king of Numidia, which is modern-day Algeria and Tunisia, and he is still a symbol of power in North Africa to this day. The war between Jugurtha and Rome was part of the Roman defeat of North Africa. Marius realized the Romans could not win, so he made a deal with one of Jugurtha's old enemies who betrayed Jugurtha. This led to his capture and a Roman victory. Jugurtha was then buried alive under a prison.
Marius and Sulla actually work on the same side during this time, as they're both in the Roman military. Because Marius is a senior member of the army, and Sulla is not quite known as a leader yet, Sulla works under Marius. Marius's ideas were the reason that Rome was able to beat Jugurtha, but somehow Sulla managed to convince everyone that it was him, and he was credited with this victory. This is the first time that we see a disagreement between Marius and Sulla. Marius still got some of the credit and returned to Rome a hero. He now began his reform of army recruitment. Because of this, he was voted to take over military command in Rome. Marius is responsible for setting countless tactical reforms into motion. The tactical reform he is most known for was the javelin reform. The pilum was the long spear that soldiers would throw at the enemy. Marius changed the iron rivets that strongly held the spear to the handle with wooden rivets, so the spear would break on impact and could not be picked up by the enemy and used against the Romans. Marius is also known for making his soldiers carry their own equipment. What a jerk! This included their weapons and armor, a basket for shifting earth, a piece of rope or leather, a sickle, and a pickaxe with a cutting blade on one side and the other side for digging or cutting. Anything that a soldier could not carry would be attached to the pila muralia, a large pole used for carrying equipment. Marius is also credited for implementing the Aquila battle standard. There were 5 battle standards for legions: eagle, wolf, minotaur, horse, and boar. Marius is responsible for creating the eagle standard. The Aquila is a symbol of Jupiter, and it became the supreme standard of all legions. The Aquila carried by the Aquilophar was a senior standard bearer. The Aquila battle standard was increased the loyalty and devotion of the soldiers. Another massive change that Marius made was switch from maniples to cohorts within the legion. This change no longer made it necessary to own land to serve in the military. The new legion, which had 4,800 men, was made up of 10 cohorts. A cohort was made of 6 centuries with 80 each. Marius became a consul in Rome for 9 years in a row, which no one had ever done before, because there used to be a rule that one person had to wait 10 years in between consulships. Some of the rich people who liked to keep things the same way didn't really like that he changed up the whole system. Even though he was pretty good and did some pretty good things for Rome, these rich people, called the optimates, were usually against him because he was poor. And he didn't have a good family. He wasn't rich. Meanwhile, Sulla had some little jobs in government and the military, and he was working his way up. In 91 BC, this thing called the Social War was started. The Social War was between Rome and the rest of Italy. Rome and these Italian states used to be friends, but the Italians were mad because they worked hard for Rome in the army, but Rome didn't give them citizenship, which was a really big deal back then. Sulla wasn't really famous when it started, but he got to control a big part of the Roman army, and when Rome won, he got a lot of the credit. Marius was getting kind of old at this point, and he was sick during the war, so he didn't have an important job. And Marius and Sulla, they hadn't really started being against each other yet, so they were on the same side for this war. The year that the Social War ended, Sulla was elected consul. There was a king named Mithridates who killed 80,000 Romans. So Rome had to pick someone to lead the army and go fight him. The rich people, called the optimates, chose Sulla. But the poor people, called the populares, chose Marius. Because the position that one of the poor people had, the tribune of the people, they had the final say, and Marius officially got the job. Sulla was a bit salty, and he still had the army from the war that had just ended, so he took them into Rome, killed the tribune of the people, and exiled Marius. Sulla then departed for the east to fight Mithridates, and because transportation and communication were so limited, Sulla became somewhat detached from Rome. While he was away, Marius' old pal Cinna was elected consul, but was soon driven out by his co-consul. Together, Marius and Cinna invade Rome and violently take it over with unnecessary massacres lasting for days. You kidding me? Marius and Cinna remained consuls for a year, but they both died soon after, because they were both old. Sulla had just agreed peace with Mithridates when he heard of Cinna's death. When he heard of this, he rebelled against Rome. Because it took so long to transport an entire army, Sulla didn't make it back to Rome for a whole year. But when he did, he joined up with other leaders, including Crassus and Pompey. His army was able to defeat both current consuls, one in the north and one in the south. And then violently he defeated Rome. Sulla now proclaimed himself permanent dictator and began the proscriptions, which were essentially lists of people Sulla wanted killed. Besides this, Sulla made some actual governmental reforms, which leaned, towards the optimates, including increasing the power of the Senate and decreasing the power of the tribune of the people. After about 2 years as dictator, Sulla resigned and retired to his estate with a new young wife, and he died the next year. Marius and Sulla, they may have fought each other a lot, but in the end, they were both kind of evil, and they both had some pretty good ideas that helped improve Rome, but they each killed a bunch of people for basically no reason, which is pretty lame.